Hello! Welcome back to Michael and Ben. It's my new intro that I do. It's a thing.
Scared 5-year-old boy who talks to a stranger.
Welcome back to Michael and Benjamin's podcast. I am the man in Irish podcasting who has legs who are strong like his mother's so he can run for cover if he needs to. I am Michael. And I am joined by the Irish podcast co-host who has, luckily, breasts which are small and humble so they aren't confused with mountains. It's Benjamin. Very good. Yeah, we were listening to Shakira earlier. You're going to have to accept our apology today because there are some small children playing outside.
Yep, they're bloody having fun, enjoying the sunshine. The little, well, I won't say that.
Deeply inconsiderate.
Deeply inconsiderate. We did come out to them, offer them tea and biscuits to go inside and perhaps watch Peppa Pig or something like that. They then proceeded to tell us to go away.
Yeah.
Or they'd call their mums and dads. So we left.
Ben, you have said we did come out to them as though we went out and revealed to them that we were homosexuals.
We were coming out. We wanted the world to know.
This is not true.
Benjamin. Sorry, yeah, go on.
Speaking of...
representation in podcasting.
Yeah. Do you want to do the theme music?
Theme music for the podcast. We don't actually have any theme music. But I hope someone will make some up for us. I don't wanna name any names. Rachel, I hope it's Rachel.
You picked the worst possible moment. I had to gulp my water.
Yeah, that was pretty poor timing. I will admit that. I'm going to turn your mic down a little bit because you're really hitting them reds.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
You're really hitting them reds, Ben. Is that you? Talk a bit there.
Well, baby, lock them door and turn them reds real low.
Because you see, that won't be interesting for the listeners because they will not hear that I've fixed it.
Yeah, I suppose because you fixed it so soon.
It's a bloody glimpse behind the magic.
It's a triumph for us, but for nobody else.
Ben, speaking of a glimpse behind the magic, the Oscars are on now?
Hostless.
Are they still hostless?
Hostless. They're doing a hostless Oscars, apparently.
Oh.
Apparently.
How's that going to work?
Don't know.
Is it just going to be silence?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be just category after category. Well, there was more controversy, Michael, because they tried to remove 4 of the key categories of the Oscars and do them off airtime during
Best
commercials. No, nothing that would have taken away from the individual, but they were going to give away best cinematography
during a commercial
best
break.
Editing.
The irony.
during a commercial break, and a large amount of very popular film directors, for example, Martin Scorsese, the Coen brothers, etc.
Jimmy C.
Yes, wrote an open letter to the Oscars and said, this is the greatest disgrace ever. This is used to recognize the people in our industry who are not at the forefront of publicity.
And then you're going to try and cut them out?
And then some Oscars press guy came in and he's like, well, we'll alternate the categories. So this year it'll be those categories, but next year it'll be 4 different categories.
Best actor.
Yeah, it'll never be that though, is it? Because people know them and that'll get you revenue.
That's very interesting, man. I didn't know that.
This is the thing. It's a revenue-based decision, Michael.
Benjamin, speaking as we are, mind you, about popular culture, are you excited about Black Panther winning Best Picture?
No, because it shouldn't.
Oh.
Well, look, no. Whoa. Don't you whoa me. Whoa. Don't you Scooby-Doo me. Whoa. No, it shouldn't win it. It was not the world's greatest film. I think the one aspect of Black Panther that should definitively win an Oscar is costuming.
Yes, best costuming. Costume
design. Good. They designed an entire African nation's subset tribal wardrobe. Mm-hmm. One woman did that entire thing. She's incredibly impressive. Now she didn't make and manufacture all those costumes, but she designed an entire aesthetic.
It was a team effort then.
With Ryan Coogler to just birth an African nation.
Yeah, probably should win best costumes.
Should win best costume.
Not best film though.
It
wasn't even the best superhero film.
No,
it was a good film though.
Good film.
But Ben, it's about cultural significance more than film.
It's a cultural milestone, Michael. It's a cultural milestone. Black representation in film.
Did Rocky win Best Picture?
Which one?
The first one?
Yeah, I think so. It was the first one. That wasn't even it. No, I didn't even get that right. I don't know what that is.
That's not Rocky, though.
But yeah, Rocky won it, I think. once. Was that for Italians in screenwriting?
Yeah, probably. Or people who started in soft porn.
Yeah.
Benjamin, speaking of politics, which we probably shouldn't talk about, but let's do it anyway. Benjamin, I noticed that you have left a scathing review on Rotten Tomatoes for Captain Marvel despite not having seen it.
I did not do that, Michael. You know that's the exact axe that I have brought to grind today at the tiny room. For anyone who hasn't been keeping up with this, there's currently a little bit of controversy surrounding Miss Brie Larson and the upcoming Captain Marvel movie from Marvel Studios. That controversy is predominantly white male based in that there seems to be some kind of backlash from a very insecure demographic.
Comicsgate
demographic, the same that always comes up here and again, of people boycotting the movie before it even comes out. Now, what I would say about that, and the argument I have there, is there doesn't actually seem to be that much of a backlash. I haven't seen a backlash. I spent this week looking at the Rotten Tomatoes website trying to figure out where that backlash was coming from. And what there is a series of comments that said, I'm not really interested in this movie. But from every comic book news site that I visit, I see the words misogynistic backlash and white men backlash. Many of the profile pictures on Rotten Tomatoes do not clearly identify the race of the people who are commenting. So I'd like to know where that kind of sensationalist journalism is coming from, first of all.
Well, Ben, it's almost as if you have had a realization there to yourself that the media has an agenda.
Yeah, I think I'm just sick of it, Michael.
You're sick of the media's agenda?
I think I've just had enough. I would also like to semi-defend Brie Larson and also semi-condemn Brie Larson, a semdem, if you will.
37% want to see the movie on Rotten Tomatoes.
This is interesting. Again, this is the kind of person who feels that their opinion on the internet matters in some form. And that this will somehow make a difference. These are the people who haven't even seen the movie yet that have gone forward and left a negative comment because they feel a personal umbrage towards this particular film. I find that fascinating.
Not even film, though. Person.
Yeah, they just don't like Brie Larson.
It's Brie Larson that's generating all this hate.
And I suppose we should probably clarify why Brie Larson is receiving a little bit of hate.
Well, some of it's because she's had the temerity to be a woman.
Yeah, how dare she?
Yeah, but also
more men in female roles. That's what I want to see. Where's our representation in female-led films? Huh?
I wanted to see Captain Marvel being played by a white Irish man in his 20s.
Yeah.
Because I feel white Irish men in their 20s are underrepresented in the female characters.
We will actually be sticking up my audition tape for Captain Marvel on the Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, she's not doing herself any favours, though, is she, Ben?
Well, she's made a bit of a blunder, Michael, recently at an Associated Press event when she was asked about how she feels. Well, first of all, what kicked all this off, I suppose, was that she would prefer more diversity in the people who cover her movie releases.
Like us.
Yeah. Now, given that the two of us are white men,
yes,
she may have a point there. But, however, she said that if she had a choice between an underrepresented minority interviewing her or a white man interviewing her, the white man was out of luck. Now, this has been misread in a couple of ways. First of all, the demographic that gets a bit butthurt about stuff like this was like, oh, she hates white men. That's not what that comment means. It was an insensitive comment. She could have worded it any number of ways.
In many ways, she's like a female Liam Neeson.
Yeah, she kind of just blundered into this comment. So she did that.
She's a Liametta Neeson.
Mm-hmm. And then later on at an Associated Press event, she said that she didn't care, and this is paraphrasing, I'm not 100% accurate here.
Oh, so it's probably not true.
No, she did say this. You can look it up. I'm just going to miss one or two words that she said. She said, I have it written down here.
Go on.
She didn't care about the opinion of a 40-something white man giving out about her film that wasn't made for him. She was saying this in reference to A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, that was a load of shite.
Which was a load of shite. And she was defending her right to say it. And recently she has said that it's not really up to her how people take her words. and she's entitled to say them. I think the issue that I take with this more than anything is the fact that Brie Larson, as an in the spotlight celebrity with a considerable amount of clout and quite a big loudspeaker due to fame, thinks that she's not responsible for the things that she says. That seems to me like a very convenient get out of jail free card for saying whatever the heck you want.
It's interesting that I always kind of disbelieved the shill media hypothesis. The whole, there are some people who are just shilling for Marvel and Disney, and that they are kinder to Marvel and Disney films than other films because they want to be associated with it,
because it's very positive
whatever. I always, but it is odd that, I don't know if we talked about this last week, but a lot of your shill media companies are writing articles about how it's going to be a massive opening and a big smash, despite the fact that the opening has been consistently for the last few months dropped. The predictions have gone down.
Well, they've gone up now again this week
because
of the controversy. They've gone from 100 million predicted opening box office weekend to 120.
But wasn't it 180 a few months ago?
It was 180 a few months ago. So there's been a significant... interesting that you should say, on the subject of shilling, the director of the upcoming Shazam movie came out and said, I can't wait...
He came out? Did he tell the kids outside? Was that a fuck's sake with the
Scooby-Doo voice? Generally speaking, he came out and said, I can't wait for Captain Marvel to come out and make all the money so these people can shut up. Which I think is the stupidest thing that a filmmaker could say about another person's film. I can't wait for somebody to come out and make lots of money to shut people up. What you should say is, I can't wait for this movie to come out, be very good, and prove people wrong. I can't wait for this well-made film to come out, be successful from a cultural perspective, and do very well. But no, he said, and make all the money so that people will be quiet.
It's all about the dollar, isn't it, Ben?
But that's not what representation's about, Michael.
Well, at the end of the day...
Is representation just about money?
At the end of the day, Ben, it is, because most critics of these type of films are white men in their 40s, because they're based on comic books that were squarely aimed at white boys in their teens in the 90s.
Yeah, but that's racist, Michael.
But the reason they're successful is those white boys in their teens have grown up into men with money. So
what you're saying now, Michael, is that we should just stop making films out of things that happened in the past and start to make new comics and make films out of those in the present?
No.
You see, you wouldn't make movies that way, would you, Michael?
Well, I was talking with my good lady friend about this the other day, about Jessica Jones.
About
how season 2 was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, it was a bit of
the reason Jessica Jones season 2 was a bit of a disappointment, in my opinion, Ben, is because Jessica Jones isn't that well developed a character. No. She hasn't had 40 years to gestate into having lots of interesting backstories that you can pull nuggets from. She hasn't got landmark moments from the comics that get translated into film and cause an absolute rapture among fanboys. Yeah, she has the Purple Man story, and that's pretty much it for her. And they bloody got rid of him fair quick. And then the next most interesting thing for Jessica Jones after that is marrying Luke Cage and having a daughter, and that doesn't make for gripping television. That's not great. That's not what I want to see. That's not a 21st century storyline. It might be what Brie Larson thinks white American women in their early 30s... How old is Brie Larson? She's in her 30s. Is she? White American women in their early 30s want to see. And maybe then, like... You see, again, we're getting so sucked into American culture. You see, you can't, and it's not really, I don't know if we're allowed to comment. Are we allowed to comment on American culture? We're allowed to comment, but it just, Ben, I like to avoid getting too sucked into it because we're not Americans. We don't live in America. It seems to be a very fractured place. But their politics don't, they're all identity politics. I know, but they're creeping into Irish life as well. But there's no need. Ways. But look, anyway, you should, if you want to see some real negativity, read a review of a pop culture piece of entertainment from, let's say, the Irish Times. Yeah, they don't it doesn't matter if they're men, women, in their 30s, in their 40s, it's going to be scathing. Yeah, I believe a leader was called Big-Eyed Nonsense. Yeah, if it's not about Oscar B. Yeats and suffering digging the land for potatoes. Look, if there's no famine, there's no stars. Yeah, it's bizarre. But anyway, look. There's critic schmitix. There's a 50-year-old white man who needs to be... Donald Bloody Clark is not a fan of anything. Look, none of the Irish Times, they do not give
good reviews for anything.
No, they do.
That
They
isn't
give,
Irish.
if it's a real sad thing about like poor Irish people and their suffering, oh God, it'll get 5 stars.
Yeah.
No
A
matter
gritty,
what.
real take on an urban landscape that we're all experiencing.
Yeah, but sure, look, people have their likes, Ben, and their dislikes. What are we talking about? Let's speaking of Ben,
Speaking of,
Jessica Jones, it got cancelled.
yeah, it's pretty
Even though
gone.
the third season's not even out yet.
Dunzo, Hunzo.
Yeah. Look, Ben, this was inevitable.
Yeah, sure, look, they're having there's an El Cul. There's a snap. A Netflix snap.
It's about time someone referenced it, the sons of bitches.
Yeah, they don't have it. They don't have the rest of it.
Yeah. Look, we predicted this months ago, Ben. We knew that once the merger and everything was going ahead, that Netflix wouldn't want to be paying a lot of money to make Marvel things, and Marvel would be more than happy to take them back because
they can do more with them now because they got that Disney money.
They've got a degree of control. So
Disney money.
There's no real news there, is there, Ben?
No, not really. No.
Yeah. Ben, make a prediction for us. Do you think that we will see any of these shows popping up again?
Yeah, but not in any of the cast or iterations we've seen today.
You don't think so?
No, I think we'll probably end up... Although there was a billboard bought in, where was it, Times Square? By the fans of the Save Daredevil campaign. They paid a collective amount of money to put it up, and there's an now Save Daredevil billboard up in Times Square. It won't do anything. But again, I think it's just giving people that generally don't have much to believe in something to believe in.
Aww.
Sad that it's a silly little Save Daredevil campaign, but look.
This is getting very sad.
It makes them happy. Move us on to something. Give us an old classic Michael segue there, please.
Look, Ben, we've talked there about the decline of Marvel television, but we seem to be entering an almost a golden age of DC television.
Yeah, it's bloody good.
Stop
Michael.
rubbing your legs, you weirdo.
Can we pick that up on the mics? Can you hear me?
Yeah, let's have a little quiet moment and here can we hear Ben's ASMR leg rubbing. Well, we'll never know.
No, we'll never know.
The noise cancelling will probably take that out.
Yeah. We can cut that out.
What are we talking about now? We'll leave it in. Look.
The golden age of DC television.
Golden age of DC television. Ben, they've been going pretty strong on the CW for the last 7-8 years.
Yeah, but it's not great.
Look, it's real television shit.
Yeah, CW is made for people that have a Dawson's Creek-sized gap in their lives, or and then Riverdale came along, and now we don't need superheroes in title other anymore. We have Riverdale to do that for us. Riverdale is really just teenage fetish stuff for lads who feel uncomfortable looking at teenage fetish stuff. Like, I watched...
Are you saying you feel comfortable looking at teenage fetish?
Yeah, perfectly comfortable. Perfectly comfortable, Michael. Since you're going to lay that kind of trap, fine, I'll just walk in. I watched an episode recently with my sister, because my sister watches Riverdale.
Yes, I think this is not the first time you've mentioned this.
On the old Netflix. And it's a very strange show.
I've never seen one.
I will say that it leans into its odd silliness, and it knows now that what people like about it is the bizarre twists and melodrama. And in season 2 and 3 of this, they've just turned it up to 11.
Well, Ben, it is a comic book property. We probably should
have
been covering it.
Yeah, sorry, Archie is a comic book property. Archie is a time-honored American tradition that outlasts a lot of superhero comics.
It looks like the breakout character is Cheryl
and Jughead. Jughead's very popular.
Is he?
He's a Sprouse brother, which means nothing to you, but for anybody who grew up watching The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, the Sprouse twins were The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and they were very beloved as a set of twins having shenanigans in a hotel. Speaking
of the mic, Ben, you're speaking over the mic. Remember your tick.
A pair of. See, I can't see the mic clearly. It's just a vague silhouette, so I keep missing. But they were a pair of twins that had shenanigans in a hotel, and they were very beloved by the wonderful, wonderful world of Disney fans. And then the Disney fans grew up, and it's only bloody one of the Sprouse twins back on TV.
Oh, very good.
And he's a real breakout hit.
But Ben, all this aside,
yes, sorry,
DC's new streaming service seems to be the start of a renaissance, or a renaissance if you prefer, of quality TV production with lots of swearing.
It's very good.
We both enjoyed Titans somewhat, you more than I.
Yeah.
Because you've seen all of it?
Yes, I'm also Robin invested.
Oh.
I like a Robin storyline that's good. They're very few and far between, but they do exist. I also enjoy Beast Boy. And I enjoyed the Teen Titans cartoon, so I was all ready for a Titans.
Did you ever see Teen Titans Go? To the movies?
Yes, I watched it. Very good.
Did you? Oh.
Very good. Complete piss take.
Yeah.
But very good. They got their own little Doom Patrol Go section Did I not tell you that?
No.
Doom Patrol Go was a little spin-off thing they did as a promo for what we're about to talk about.
Oh, very good.
They got their own little versions of...
So, now you spoiled that, so let's talk about Doom Patrol.
Sorry. We both enjoyed Titans, and Doom Patrol seems to be even better. I think
say,
from a writing point of view, it's much clearer on what it wants to achieve. Very humorous, very, very meta.
Yeah.
Very much in keeping with the comic book.
Yeah.
It has yours and my friend, Mr. Alan Tudyk,
yes,
as the main villain.
And narrator.
And it's bloody good, Michael.
Ben, it has been very good so far. I would liken it to a cross between the Umbrella Academy, which was also good and we both enjoyed.
We did.
But was quite slow in places.
It was interesting. We'll just take a quick segue here because I'd like to commend Mick on his review of the Umbrella Academy.
I don't even remember what I said then.
Mick mentioned that tonally speaking, it seemed to be a little mishmash in that it borrowed elements from some things, for example, Wes Anderson, and then tried to mix them with elements of other things, for example, Stephen King. And the Stephen King will be my addition because I find that towards the end of the Umbrella Academy, and spoilers for a TV series,
I think they're a bit carry.
It gets very carry towards the end. The world's tiniest lesbian, Ellen Page, is just carry by the end of the film.
Yeah.
Very gory, very over the top all of a sudden.
Let's do a little spoiler here for both the comic The Umbrella Academy and the TV show The Umbrella Academy. It made sense if you're doing a slightly more real world TV show, because in the comic, Ben, you'll remember that she becomes the White Violin because she's captured or enticed by a demonic conductor.
Yes.
Who is just in it for the evil.
Yeah. Whereas
in the TV show The Umbrella Academy was like a combination of the Dark Phoenix story, The Incredibles,
yes,
and The Umbrella Academy the comic.
Yes, and You, the television series about a serial killer from Netflix.
I haven't watched that.
Wouldn't bother. Apparently I'm very like the main character who is a serial killer. Several people have told me this, and I take great offense to that. Because like, oh, you have the same mannerisms, which mean I'm a serial killer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ben, interestingly, when Ben has had a haircut, everybody, and when you came into the place where we work with your new haircut, I said to you, I noticed you've copied my hair, which was an Infinity War joke, and you didn't notice.
I'm trying to look at my own hair.
Oh, you can't see it.
It's not possible.
What were we saying?
It's an Infinity War joke.
Where have we gone?
Something about my hair. Anyway, we're very rambly today. We're doing the podcast at a different time. Apparently morning is the only time where it all succinct or clear.
We've had too much coffee.
Capable of springing thoughts together. But your review of Umbrella Academy was very, very good. It does suffer massively. It was a loose 10, not a loose 15 as you thought.
That's good.
Thank God for that, because if it had gone any longer, I would have lost interest.
Yeah.
But I stayed up yesterday evening. Friday evening, and I watched a lot of the bloody Umbrella Academy.
And you know what, Ben? Anytime a show does a whole episode which then doesn't happen, fuck them.
Yeah, why did they do that? I enjoyed the tones. I enjoyed the strange dance scene between Space Boy and Rumour. I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed that Mom was going to be the one to tell Diego. I thought in many ways, the pre-time jump episode was better because, tonally speaking, with different characters, for example, Mom was going to reveal the secret of Hargreaves to Diego, which made sense because he has such a close relationship with the mom bot.
Yeah.
And we were going to find out all these different things.
Yeah, much
but
better.
Then you had the interesting Cha-Cha Hazel storyline was going to wrap up in an interesting way.
And then that happened anyway.
And then that happened. Yeah, they see, this is the thing. Other things happen completely differently, and then other things happened exactly the same way they would have happened.
Yeah, the things that which happened without Five's interference happened exactly the way they would have happened. And look, it was stupid.
It was an unnecessary section of the episode.
My least favourite episode.
We could have had a tight 8. We could have had a tight 8 without that interference.
Anyway, Doom Patrol.
I'm not done with.
Oh, you're not done.
That's fine. Go on, Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol.
Good.
Yes, possibly better than the Umbrella Academy.
I, so far, am thoroughly enjoying it, Ben. It is very much like a mix between... This is what I'm doing today. Everything's just a mix between other things.
Yes.
It's a mix between the Umbrella Academy. Have I already said this?
Yes.
It's a mix between the Umbrella Academy and the TV show Legion.
No, you didn't get the Legion part yet. But
it has some of the surrealism of a Legion.
It makes more sense. Alan Tudyk's character, Mr. Nobody, is almost like what Legion would be if he was the main villain of Legion.
Yeah, you could say that.
It's almost like they've taken Dan... What's his name?
Harmon.
No, Dan Harmon.
Stevens.
No, Dan Stevens. There we go. They've taken Dan Stevens' character and made him the baddie.
In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways.
his origin, Ben, Ben, do you want to tell us first what even is the Doom Patrol?
Are we going to do what even is Doom Patrol now?
Are we? Yeah,
fair enough.
We'll talk about the two in tandem.
Okay, let me just flick my page back there because I got
Ben,
notes.
What even is the Doom Patrol?
Big old box of notes. So the Doom Patrol is one of those quite early comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the interesting thing about the Doom Patrol is if you turn to any DC Comics fan, they're a DC property, first of all.
Right.
If you turn to any DC Comics fan and say, what's the Doom Patrol?
Mm-hmm.
They can tell you it's a superhero team.
Yeah.
If you ask who is the Doom Patrol or who is in the Doom Patrol, they'll go,
there's a robot.
There's a robot.
I think the Invisible Man is in there.
Yeah, and it gets very confusing after that point. So the comic itself started in 1963.
A week before X-Men.
No, a little bit more than X-Men. It was about 2 months, 3 months, 3 months before X-Men. And it was in a comic called My Greatest Adventure. And this was when we were trying out lots of different things. So the important thing to remember here is this is when comics were not just superhero-based or predominantly superhero-based. You had your sci-fi anthologies, your horror anthologies, you had romance comics, adventure comics. There was basically a niche of comic for every type of young man who read them. And I say young man not to be not inclusive to young women, but that was the target demographic. They were pitched towards young fliss.
Yeah. Brie Larson wouldn't like it.
Brie Larson wouldn't like it. She would require an underrepresented minority, which I feel is like an offensive type. Anyway,
it's almost an offensive word.
It's almost an offensive word. It seems very belittling of whoever it is that does it.
Look,
anyway, oh God, we're definitely going to lose followers on this one. Sorry, lads.
Go on.
But anyway, My Greatest Adventure was the name of this one, and it was adventure comics, and the superhero genre was just being tested properly. Anyway, a man called Arnold Drake was hired to kind of give it a whirl with a strange group, a super team, and see how they did. He got a friend of his, Bob Haney, to help him out in the story. So the two creators of Doom Patrol are Bob Haney and Arnold Drake. He came up with the Doom Patrol, which is an obscure reference to a 1938 film called The Dawn Patrol.
That's not obscure, though.
About a series of flying aces who took on suicide missions quite a bit. And the Doom Patrol is very, very similar in a superhero sense. Their famous kind of tagline is the world's strangest heroes. And it's really interesting. They're led by a chap in a wheelchair called Dr. Niles Calder.
As every superhero team in the 60s was.
Yeah, fair enough. They have Robot Man, who is the most consistent member of the Doom Patrol through all iterations. He's a human brain, Cliff Steele, in a robot body.
He's Brendan Fraser.
He's Brendan Fraser in the film adaptation, or in the TV adaptation. It's very interesting. Then we have Rita Farr, or Elastigirl, who's basically the Incredible 50-Foot Woman from Anything Ever. She has probably gone through the most interesting change with regards to the TV series.
Because she's more of a blob.
She's more of a blob. She's like, which is again a B-movie reference.
They might be heading towards her getting control of her powers.
Yeah, she's going to get control of her powers eventually.
To be able to be a big... And a very attractive lady.
She's a very attractive lady. Very attractive lady. And then the other people in the original lineup...
She was the ditzy wife in 2.5 Men.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's who she is.
She's Candy.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's good, isn't it?
Mind blown. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, keep going.
No, I need to take a break. That's insane. That's insane. Then we have Larry Traynor.
You'll probably stick her in the thumbnail.
Who is? Oh, she's going in the thumbnail. Her and Crazy Jane. Ben had a very belated formative experience this week watching the Doom Patrol. But we'll get into that in a second. The Negative Man is then Larry Traynor. He was
sometimes
a pilot. Yeah, or we'll get to that in a second.
Calm down.
But basically, he in the original iteration, in this 1963 iteration, his powers are radioactive. He's a radioactive man. He's got radiation powers, and they allow him to kind of manifest a negative astral form, if you want to look at it that way. And then over the years, they added more people, but that was always the core group. It was Rita the Chief, Robot Man, and Negative Man. And then more people came in as they went along. They were so successful that they were introduced in issue 80 of My Greatest Adventure, and by issue 86 of My Greatest Adventure in 1963, they renamed the comic to Doom Patrol. So that's how successful this original run was.
But it also means there's no Doom Patrol issue 1.
No, there is no Doom Patrol issue 1. There's only My Greatest Adventure issue 80, featuring the Doom Patrol, which is very interesting. After that,
yes, Ben.
They lasted until issue 121, where in kind of a comic first, they were all killed.
Oh.
Unsurreptitiously. And
do you mean unceremoniously?
Unceremoniously is exactly what I meant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I meant. They were all bloody fridged.
Yeah.
But it's okay because it's comics and they came back. So it's grand. But that was the original run. Very popular. Again, they really lived up to this tagline of the world's strangest heroes. And they had some very strange... They had an immortal kind of World War I Nazi called General Immortus.
Yeah.
And he was a decrepit old man who was immortal.
Real son of a bitch.
Real son of a bitch. They had a brain in a jar called the Brain.
Yeah.
And they fought a thing who was in love later with a gorilla called Mr. Mala, a hyper-intelligent gorilla called Mr. Mala, which is a good LGBTQ...
In a way.
It was retconned as we went along. Although, I don't know, there's complicated representation there. They also had, who's by and far my favourite villain of all time now, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man.
Yeah,
who could transform any part of his body into, you guessed it, an animal, a vegetable, or a mineral. So they'd go up against him a bunch. Which
he's kind of halfway between Amazo and the Absorbing Man.
It's incredible. It's just so bizarre. Yeah, so they had all these bizarre kind of villains, and they were the Brotherhood of Evil. Now, what makes this most fascinating is 3 months after they made their debut, there's only a bloody other team of misfits led by a lad in a wheelchair. You have, yeah, you just went and smashed around it. But the first moniker that the first tagline that the X-Men went under...
This is going to take a while.
He's moving all his 90s X-Men figures onto the table, which is going to lead to a podcasting disaster at some point when I inevitably knock them over. But then the X-Men came out.
Yeah.
And they're called the strangest...
They told the kids outside they were gay.
They're called the strangest heroes of all. That was their tagline when they originally came out. They were led by a hyper-intelligent man in a wheelchair.
Who might have been a bit shifty.
Getting shifty.
Usually wore green.
Niles Calder generally wears orange. But I don't think that has anything to do with it. But very similar. Their villains are called the Brotherhood of Mutants.
They're evil mutants. Sometimes.
There's
a lot of similarities.
And Arnold Drake maintains that, and I believe he was very diplomatic when he used to say this, that Stan Lee was heavily inspired by the Doom Patrol.
Well, it wouldn't be like Stan Lee to be heavily inspired by something and then denied.
No, it wouldn't. He would never do that.
No, he would all the time.
Yeah, he does it all the time. Did it all the time. Did it all the time.
Rest in peace, Stan. Fuck that guy.
Could have given some accreditation. Yeah, I'm far enough to be there. That's going to lose a few viewers as well. That's okay. Very interesting team originally, but I suppose what they're most famous for is Grant Morrison.
Wee Granty
Morrison.
Or as we call him on the podcast, Granty M. Big
B.G. Morrison or Granty M.
Yeah.
But anyway, probably most famous for him. So I'll just go through a little bit more of what they got up to.
Ben, I'm going to let you finish. Right?
Go on.
I'm going to let you finish.
Go right ahead.
There is a much forgotten writer between those two. I can't even remember his name.
Is it Paul Kupperberg?
Kupperberg, yeah, that's him. Yeah, he invented cider. And the comics he wrote weren't very good, Ben.
They weren't very good.
They were very generic and bad.
They were.
And
B-list storylines.
They really were, Ben.
With D-list heroes.
Very much so. And I have read quite a lot of them for
some
reason.
Oh, God, forgive you.
And one of the best things about them is that in the very final issue of his run, the Doom Patrol, who are a bunch of nobodies at this stage, I think Robot Man is the only one who's worth
consistent.
Anything. Yeah. Well, there's a negative woman.
Then we have Celsius, negative woman.
It's a load of shite. But anyway, they're all kind of killed off or put in comas and stuff.
Yes.
But they're defeated by a team of like Amazon leather-clad dominatrix henchwomen.
That's what I require from all my B-list
action tales. Like a John Claremont or Chris Claremont, John Byrne wet dream.
Just a smorgasbord of fetishes.
Very, very strange. But it was funny because it made me think of Stormwatch and how Stormwatch was taken over by Warren Ellis.
Who's
the kind of 90s Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
and he took a generic superhero team and made them into something more fun and original, the Authority.
Yeah.
And this had happened 10 years previously.
I think this is a recurring thing. When you have
a team of generic heroes.
A team of generic heroes and you can't do anything with them because American comic book writers don't really know what to do with old teams. You get in your oddball Brits
Bring
and
in
you
some sort of British wizard.
get the Brit lads in and you know get your technomancers, your chaos magicians, your bloody casual Norfolk magic users, and you get them to rehaul and retcon some stuff. So since we're jumping straight into the oddness, I suppose Paul Kupperberg, who you mentioned, his greatest achievement for the Doom Patrol is that he did
writing the Doom Patrol to focus on cider.
But yes, he did. Yes. Sadly, Paul Kupperberg's liver may rest in pieces. But I suppose his kind of endearing legacy to the Doom Patrol is that he didn't give up on them, despite never really doing them any favors. So he got that. He revived them in 1977, and they went through another rough old time of it. He just couldn't write.
They were generic superheroes.
Yeah, the man wasn't a great writer. He didn't understand. And I suppose that tagline, which I'm going to keep coming back to, World's Strangest Heroes, was left by the wayside, and they became more and more generic as they went along.
Genericest heroes.
World's most genericest heroes. Your casual lucky dip of superheroes with various powers.
Someone's got a magnet.
Yeah.
Someone's able to shoot a laser.
Someone's got a real strong brain.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Under him, we got introduced to Mento, who's a terrible knockoff character, sometimes married to Rita Farr, sometimes not. We got bloody Beast Boy, who became the breakout star of the Doom Patrol overall. Good old Beast Boy. But he repeatedly tried to do this again and again and again, and repeatedly got cancelled again and again and again.
Him, though. He stuck with it.
He just wouldn't let it go. So he tries again in 1987. Yeah. He's allowed to write them until issue 18 in this new reboot. And then into Granty Morrison.
Wee Granty
M. And Grant Morrison, if for anybody who doesn't know, is a bloody oddball.
He's a wizard.
I can say that now because I had to watch interviews featuring Mr. Grant Morrison
Granty M.
all week. Sweet Jesus. Michael, once upon a time on the podcast, you said that he must be playing a character.
I think he is. I think he's fictional.
And I could not agree with you more.
I think he's doing a thing.
That man, because he also, it's interesting, there's a very good documentary up on YouTube called Talking with Gods.
Right.
He wrote a book kind of deconstructing superheroes called Super Gods, and then a small offbeat TV channel made a documentary about him with other creators and stuff like that. Very low production value, very good in terms of content. Check it out.
Podcast.
Talking with Gods, like our podcast. Well, I don't know. Don't know about that. You put a lot of effort into our production quality, Michael. Don't sell yourself too short. The content's shocking. So, he did this, and he must be playing a character because he'll assassinate other people's stories. He'll poke holes in other people's stories about him. No problem. Like, one guy tried to be like, and I swear to God, the door closed behind him without him touching it. And they cuts to Grant Morrison and be like, no, he's making that up. I didn't do that. No, I just closed the door behind me. And so he's a very down-to-earth guy who just seems to enjoy spinning long, weird tales. So Grant Morrison, for anyone who doesn't, we've spoken about him on the podcast before.
We did a whole episode, didn't we?
But I don't think we did a whole episode.
No,
I think he's gotten little features here and there. But anyway, he made it big when he got to do Vertigo's Animal Man reprint, and he made it very meta and very self-referential. And I think a lot of what Grant Morrison does these days is very biographical. He had, what I didn't know about Grant Morrison was he had kind of a real break from his original personality after he made Arkham Asylum. He became very, very rich by 80s standards after...
The 80s were the richest decade, Ben.
After Arkham Asylum, because he got $1 worth of every copy of Arkham Asylum sold.
Oh, very good.
And Vertigo sold over 120,000 copies on the first day because they came out around the same time as Tim Burton's Batman. So they were both dark in tone and very different, and he made 120,000 in a day.
Very good.
And so what he decided to do then was he took a break from comics and traveled the world and did drugs with strange people. So he kind of had this interesting thing, and he's always kind of written himself into a lot of his work. Becomes very self-referential, and Doom Patrol is no different. It's bloody odd,
Ben,
what he does with Doom Patrol.
It's odd, but looking back on it from a perspective of knowing Grant Morrison's work, it's almost like an imitation of Grant Morrison.
But it would have been the originator.
I know.
Because he went on to do everything. So everything else is an imitation of Doom Patrol.
But that's the interesting thing, because now it's like... It's full of stuff that if you wanted to make up a Grant Morrison character, you would have the characters say. Like... Oh, the shelve beings are entering through the weeping crack dimension.
Well, I can explain how this works now.
Go on.
Because I had to find out how he did it. And he actually explains how he does it. So, first of all, before anybody goes any further, Grant Morrison considers himself to be a chaos magician.
He does, yeah.
And I did an impression for your good lady friend downstairs in the kitchen.
Well, let's have it again, Ben.
Once upon a time, while writing The Invisibles, in the letters page of The Invisibles, because you used to be able to write into your comic book creators, we don't do that anymore because you just get a stream of abuse. The Hulk does it.
Yeah.
Oh, do they still have it?
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
he explained to his readership how to do a thing he calls sigil magic, which he regards as a very basic how-to in magic. So what you do is, right, you write down your statement to the universe. So you take your ideas and you put them down on paper. So for example, I want to direct a Hollywood film, and you can write that down on a piece of paper. And then what you do is you remove the vowels from the statement. And then you take all the consonants you have left behind and you start to jumble them around in different formats until you have kind of your own homemade glyph. Okay? And then when you have your glyph, you stare at it intently and you masturbate over it. I wish I was joking, right? So he came up so this is one of the ways that he does these things. But he's also massively into Dadaism. He's massively into absurdism, surrealism, deconstructionism. And these are all ideological movements. And I think... Mick is masturbating over a sigil here in the tiny room. What does it say? Well, I hope you get it. I hope you get that thing that you want to get.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Michael and Benjamin's Sexual Health Hour. Don't masturbate over sigils, kids. But yeah, so basically, he really began to explore a lot of very academic ways of deconstructing literature. These were made hugely popular in the 60s by various French critics. You had deconstructionism, structuralism, people like Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida.
Is his name pronounced Foucault?
Foucault, yeah.
I've always pronounced it Foucault.
Well, he would probably appreciate that. Because you're deconstructing language. Yeah. Jean-Paul Sartre. These kind of people were all people who looked at language and deconstructed it. And he has been very influenced by this, which makes a lot of sense because when these kind of ideologies come out, they're not very popular. And over time, they kind of gain traction and they're explained a bit more. And then they become very easy to access and use as you go along. So in the 80s, when Grant Morrison when everyone was on cocaine, these ideas had now fermented for a good amount of time and they were more accessible to people. So he was really getting into this idea of tearing language apart from the ground up. So some of the ways he did this for Doom Patrol is he would take what he would do an exercise at the end of the day where he would take a full blank page and write down everything he was thinking.
Right.
Okay? Then it didn't matter if it was boring and inane, dull and whatever. And then he would take that page and add it to a collection and put it away for a minimum amount of 3 months.
Right.
He would come back to it 3 months later, read the things and see if something made sense to him out of all the crazy shit that he wrote down. He was also experimenting with heavy forms of experimental poetry. There was a poet called Paul Woodward, and he has an experimental method of writing poetry where you remove certain keywords from different things that you write to make new ways of doing things. So all of this was being poured into a comic book. And this is why it's so fucking weird.
I don't find it that weird. I don't find, I know a friend of the pod, Gareth, was saying that we're going to, in the end, decide that it's basically not as good as the Invisibles.
I don't think the Invisibles is that good, Gareth.
It's the end of a beautiful friendship.
No, Gareth, let's still be friends. But I don't know if the Invisibles has ever made my day.
But I think that you could make up a lot of the Grant Morrison... the bloody table leg men are trying to support us by chasing us across the cross-textual referential dimensions of the mind.
Yeah, that was issue 5 of Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison.
With the table leg men.
Yeah. So basically, he took this very seriously. He first of all believes that comics are not necessarily meant to be understood easily. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. He follows
characters in the comics often don't understand what's happened.
Yeah, he follows a Kantian philosophy, and if anybody wants to know who that is, Immanuel Kant is the guy who started the Enlightenment, but he believed that you had to what a Kant, and you can actually say that, and people would get what you meant and laugh quite heartily, because he believed that in order to be educated, you have to work hard. Mm-hmm. So he would intentionally make his writing and his educational material difficult to understand, so people had to earn their education. Mm-hmm. So he was a real Kant. And Grant Morrison kind of follows this way of doing things. So you get some really odd literary references, you get some strange things. But this was all the rage with Vertigo in the 80s and early 90s, where a lot of those guys were coming over. Alan Moore, Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman were all found around this time. And Karen Berger, the woman who ran Vertigo at the time, was really into letting these intellectual British guys run old characters.
Weird shit. And I'd say Neil Gaiman, though, has there's a little bit more plot with Neil Gaiman. A little more, well, there's a lot of plot. There's a lot of plot in, you see, the Doom Patrol, Ben, the late 80s, early 90s Doom Patrol, it's a lot easier to follow than a lot of Grant Morrison's later stuff.
Yeah, Grant Morrison kind of loses the run of himself as he goes along.
It's pretty straightforward.
But he gets hailed as a god later on in comics. Like, people love Grant Morrison and they hail him as this amazing thing, and The Invisibles is held up as one of the greatest comics of all time. I think it's a self-congratulating weird biopic thing where he makes himself into a cool meta-referential fucking dude.
Yeah, you can always see when Grant Morrison has inserted himself. Did you read?
Well, he is the character King Mob from The Invisibles. He has fully acknowledged that. He said, "That's me. That's just me," because he was doing drugs with weird people and going to fetish clubs and loving it. And that's fine. I've nothing against that, but I don't necessarily care.
The main thing that came from the 80s Doom Patrol for the TV show.
All of it.
Well, the character Crazy Jane.
Crazy Jane is one of his creations. Mm-hmm. The romantic subplot that's developing between Crazy Jane and Cliff Steele is all him.
A lot of Crazy Jane's introduction is straight out of the comic.
Yeah, no, it's directly the painting.
All
painting,
that. I ruined it. The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter. It's all word for word from the comics.
The opening of issue 18, or the arc that starts off issue 18 with Grant Morrison, is called From the Wreckage.
Yes.
And when Paul Kupperberg relaunched it, it turns out that Niles Calder had a wife called Celsius who could control temperatures, and that nobody knew about up until this new reboot. So Grant Morrison did this amazing thing where he came along, he's like, I'll write that for you, no problem. And he just killed everybody he didn't want to write.
Or had Kupperberg killed him.
Yeah, or had Kupperberg killed him. He's like, I'll do that one, but I won't do that one. So he just wiped the team clean again and started from a fresh slate in a mental asylum. He liked mental asylums by that stage. Arkham Asylum, Doom Patrol.
He also introduced in that run, Ben, the Miss Nobody.
So let's come back to all this.
Right.
Most things that you see based on the Doom Patrol today will either go right back to the Golden Age, where it was weird in its initial run. You had people like Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man, or they'll go straight to the 1987 run with Grant Morrison. The TV show seems to be borrowing heavily from the Grant Morrison run.
Including a reference to Grant Morrison himself.
Crazy Jane is the first one who I have completely fallen in love with.
So, fetish.
There's some complicated things going on there. Yeah. I think she's an exceptionally attractive young lady.
Older than you.
Good for her. Older than me, which is even better. I'm all for that. Love an older woman, me.
Yeah, you like that.
I'm very into that. So if the actress who plays Crazy Jane would like to get in touch with the podcast, just let me know. Yeah, I'm around. So he's doing that. He introduced a lot of weird characters over the years. Danny the Roadway was a character. It was a sentient road.
Danny the Street.
Danny the Street. Thank you. Danny the Street. Danny the Roadway.
Danny the Roadway sounds great.
Danny the Roadway. He changed a lot of things. For example, Negative Man, from that point on, is not radioactive. He is inhabited or merged with by a cosmic being called the Negative Force, and a black woman in Crawling from the Wreckage. He has separated himself from the Negative Force or the negative being, And the negative being comes to find him and wants to re-merge. But when he does it, he goes into the room and he finds the good lady doctor, who happens to be African-American at the time, and he merges them together. And they come...
What do you mean she happens to be African-American at the time?
People
don't just change,
because it wasn't an important plot point to have someone of colour in the thing. It wasn't a quota at the time.
Oh, right. That's nice. I think it was
what I meant.
Because he keeps saying... We are male and female, black and white.
Yeah, so I think the great caricature of this now is that he becomes the trans everything superhero.
Yeah.
And he kind of just moves past the space, even though when it's drawn, it's just a male body with boobs.
Yeah.
Do you see the part? There's a section in the comic where Larry Train. No, I don't know.
Trainer.
Yeah, Reba. That's what they refer to themselves as when they're combined. So it's their Rebus. Sorry, Rebus is what they refer to themselves as. And,
Reba and Danny the Roadway, two of your most popular Doom Patrol characters. Are you doing a Grant M thing here, where you're?
Hi, Reba and Danny the Roadway. You know yourself.
You're kind of creating a slightly alternate universe version of the Doom Patrol.
So. When they combine, there's a fantastic panel where Niles Calder comes in to ask him to be part of the Doom Patrol, and Rebus is just checking out her.
There
Zers.
I think it's there because they're 3 people.
In the interest of being as multicultural and accepting, Zizzes.
Yeah.
Boobies, which are small and humble, so you don't confuse them with mountain. No, they're ample.
Quite ample.
She has ample breasts. But anyway, most importantly, the main villain of the TV show, Mr. Nobody, is a famous reintroduction of a very, very Z-list villain from the original run.
Funnily enough, Ben, this is a little personal anecdote now for you.
Go ahead.
I read the 60s version and the 80s version kind of out of sequence.
Ooh.
And hilariously, this has stuck in my mind for many years. Hilariously, the episode, the issue which introduces the Negative Man.
Yes,
the Negative Man was one of the original 60s Doom Patrol Z-list villains, and he was their first villain in their own comic book.
The Negative Man.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
But he
that.
wasn't the Negative Man. He was an inventor who made a giant red robot.
Rog.
No.
This is not Rog.
Zog?
Oh, for God's
Rog?
sake. Rog, yeah, Rog. Niles Calder made that to explore the moon.
Yeah. Oh, look, now you're getting me back. Anyway, funnily enough, Ben, I read those 2 comics one after the other.
Oh.
And it was quite odd.
That's confusing.
It was very Grant Morrison.
Yeah, very Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
very Granty M.
Yeah. Very metatextual. It was odd.
That's weird.
I was worried that hold on, I have to think of something obscure. The jock pant people from the brain dimension didn't come through the tear in the fabric of underpants
they tried
to probe me.
They tried, but Cliff Steele was there.
Yeah, this is the same. But yeah, I read them one after the other, which was really weird because it was like Granty M was in my head going, I made you do that. I told you to do that, you wee bastard.
I masturbate over sigil and said Michael reading a weird sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
And here we are. So yeah, he then reintroduced Eric Morden as... So Eric Morden was a Z-list villain who was part of the Brotherhood of Evil in the original run. He stole Rog, the moon exploring robot, and caused havoc with it. He failed, and the Brotherhood of Evil, which was being led by the Brain and Monsieur Mala at the time, hate him so much that he went and lived in Paraguay for a while. If you look at the first episode of the Doom Patrol, you can see it's set in Paraguay at some point. And then Eric Morden goes and finds a bloody Nazi scientist and wants to be more than just a human. And the Nazi scientist experiments on him and makes him become Mr. Nobody. Mr. Nobody is very interesting, and there seems to be there's either a very big jump between the powers that he has in the comics and the powers that he has in the TV show, or people are not aware of his powers and we're all being fooled by the TV show. In the comic books, Mr. Nobody has an ability to drain the sanity from
a situation,
a victim, or a situation. Mm-hmm. And that leads to all kinds of shenanigans.
Ben,
he seems to have some kind of power shaping or reality shaping power in the TV series.
That or the donkey does.
We haven't figured that out yet.
There is a very interesting panel in the creation. First of all, the creation of Mr. Nobody in the comics is much grimmer and more existentially terrifying. But
is it?
Yes. He gets paralyzed from the neck down and left in a white room for until he goes mad and he thinks he's there for eons, but he's only there for 3 days. And
I don't like that.
It's actually pretty good. But anyway, when he's created, the narrator says this, Ben. I actually took a picture of it to show you, because it just goes to show the influence that Granty M had on the likes of Warren Ellis. He said, in that moment, in that catastrophic final instant, all that I was, had been, would be, the whole infinity of my being was erased. I had become the spirit of the 21st century. The abstract man.
Bloody Warren Ellis nicked it.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. So it's interesting to see Alan Tudyk take this on. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. What's more interesting is it seems to have taken... So Mr. Gerard Way took over in 2012.
Of the Umbrella Academy.
Of the Umbrella Academy, which we were talking about a few moments ago. He's a huge fan, a very sycophantic fanboy of Grant Morrison. They're good friends now, but I watched an interview between him and Grant Morrison. He was the interviewer, and he just, my God, that man licks Grant Morrison's ass. And not in a fetish club way. Gerard Way.
Jerry W.
Gerard Way, the creator of the Umbrella Academy. He's very happy to just wax poetic about the influence that Grant Morrison has had on him and how much he loves him. It's very, very strong, but that doesn't really matter. He took over on DC's Young Animal imprint, and he was given 12 issues of Doom Patrol. Sadly, it doesn't keep running now, but it was very humorous compared to Grant Morrison's run. Very humorous. So they seem to have taken that element, the humour, and slapped it into the Doom Patrol with Grant Morrison. So we've got a fusion series on our hands. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it personally, Michael. I quite enjoyed it. It was very funny.
Benjamin, let's wrap it up here then by recommending for the people what they should see or look at or read or watch if they want to learn more about the Doom Patrol.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to learn more about the Doom Patrol, head straight back to that first ever arc, Crawling from the Wreckage. It's
That's not the first ever arc, Ben.
No, the first ever Grant Morrison arc. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, good.
Danny
the Roadway.
Check that out. Danny the Roadway's antics in Granty M Town. So check that out. By all means,
it is the quintessential Doom Patrol.
By all means, go out and have a look at the early Doom Patrol just to get an idea of from 1963, just to get an idea of how much of a prototype for the X-Men they were and how much Stan Lee stole. It's a good thing to have a look at. It's interesting to get a look at some of their older villains and stuff like that were reinvented later on in Grant Morrison runs and things like that. And check out the fairly solid series on DC Universe.
Although it's only 2 episodes so far.
2 episodes so far, but it's a good one.
Also, we haven't even mentioned this, but best depiction of Cyborg
we've ever seen.
Ever.
Like,
much better than Justice League.
Ever.
You better move, whatever the hell he says.
Yeah, no, he's just an interesting character.
He's much better.
We should also mention that if you're into the Doom Patrol and want to do anything else, an old Black Hammer, an old Umbrella Academy, they're all derivatives. The Invisibles.
Filth.
There's a lot of things. Anything Grant Morrison's ever written.
Granty M.
He did a whole Batman run that was very similar. So yeah, just check it out if that's what you're into. If that's what ticks your motor. Transmetropolitan is like a future version of that by Warren Ellis. Check it out. I think in a future episode we might do a comparison between the kind of British invasion, not of Ireland, of of comic books, and we might look at how different people approach these kind of meta texts.
800 years!
Anyway, if you or anyone you know is a big fan of the Doom Patrol, let us know down below. Have you been watching the show? Let us know what you think. We're all very interested, very invested over here at the Michael and Benjamin's podcast.
Yeah.
We are, as always, on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on Instagram. We're on SoundCloud. Hit us up on any of those. If you're a Redditor, we're on there as well.
Leave us a review.
We will be at the Dublin Comic Con in 2 weeks. On the 8th of March. We'll be doing interviews, so if you feel like popping along and doing an interview with us and seeing our shiny new business cards, please let us know. We're looking for cosplayers, we're looking for creators, we're looking for anybody who's interested in comics, really. We'd love to do an interview with you.
We'd probably interview some people who are just at a Comic-Con.
Yeah, we're going to try and grab a Granty M interview. He's not there, but we might be able to commune with him through a sigil. So Michael and I are off to write down a sentence, turn it into consonants, and have a good old tug session.
Do we have to wank over each other's sentences?
No, we're going to do it in separate rooms, Michael.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's grand.
I'm much more comfortable now.
Yeah. So, see you after the tug session, guys. Bye.
Bye.